day everyone, my name is Mark Gabriel Villazores and I am one of the reporters of Chapter 2, which is entitled Globalization and Cultural and Multicultural Literacies. And I am here now to discuss the globalization and its implication to both national and individual level. And by the end of this chapter, the students are expected to develop a clear and practical understanding of the following objectives: globalization and its implications on both the national and individual level, culture and multicultural literacy in the Philippines, and one's personal level of cultural and multicultural literacy. So let's define first the meaning of globalization. Globalization is defined as the process of interaction and integration between people. So when we are interacting with other people face-to-face or through online platforms like social media, where we use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Any means of interaction to different people, business entities, government, and culture from other nations, that is defined as globalization. So, globalization is driven by international trade. So, when we say international trade, it means the exchange of goods or products to other country. So, like for example, when we import and export rice to other country, that is international trade. We export and import goods. While investment means when company from other country invest to our country. Okay, so the globalization is supported by information technology, because when we are interacting with other people through online, here we use information technology, because information technology is defined as the use of computers, mobile phones, internet to find and send information to other people, and also international radio and TV broadcasters. They deliver information to most remote areas where people live. They can deliver information by the use of this information technology. That is why globalization is supported by this information technology. So because of our exposure to the concept of globalization has largely been through an economic lens, it is tempting to limit globalization as something that concerns economists and businessmen. So when we encounter the word globalization, the first thing that comes to our mind are the opportunities and the challenges to the economy and the businessmen. When we say the globalization and its effect, it go beyond to import or export of foreign direct investment. So the globalization go beyond the import and export of product and services, and also the foreign direct investment. When we say foreign direct investment, it is where companies from other countries invest to the companies here in our country. So the more investors, the more product and services. The result is more jobs for the people, and that is the effect of globalization. So globalization is not a new trend, because even in our history, it says here that the ancient Greeks' culture has spread widely that even the Egyptians knew their language, while the Rome was so inspired by the Greek culture that they adopted some of its way. Chinese, Arab, and Indian culture has become part of the Philippine culture. This means that even before globalization already occurred. What is different now, however, the speed at which globalization is happening, its overall scope, and its effect on the lives of ordinary people. Because the world is becoming more interconnected even before human history. Such intense relationship between the international trade of products and services, communication to other people, and politics, the term globalization is all around us. We are all challenged by its effect, but it develops opportunities to us people. Because globalization affects the lives of ordinary people. Okay, so not only are we interacting with, learning from, and integrating knowledge gained from other cultures and nations at an unprecedented rate, there is now also sense that no matter where one lives or how limited is one's face-to-face interaction with members of another nation or culture and how limited one's time spent in online, globalization and its effects are inescapable. So we cannot prevent the effects of globalization. All of us people in this world, we are affected by globalization. And no matter where we live, where I live, where you live, how we limit our interaction with other people face to face or even through online platforms, the effects of globalization is all around us. Okay? Here we go with the effects of globalization. The effects of globalization are multidimensional. They range from economic to cultural on both national and individual level. So in today's world, economic, social, and political issues are no longer to the national or individual level, but both national and individual level, because the world has become so interdependent. Interdependent, which means that people and countries around the world rely on each other to survive. Okay, so Mayer summarizes the effects of globalization as follows: economic, political, and military dependence, interdependence between nations, expanded flow of individual people among societies, interdependence of expressive culture among nations, and expanded flow of instrumental culture around the world. Economic dependence or interdependence. When the term globalization entered the Philippine public mindset in the early 90s, it was popularly understood as to be a mainly economic phenomenon, and a negative one at that. The idea that foreign-owned businesses could come into the country and freely set up a shop, thereby choking out local industries, was not a welcome even though it was erroneous. Okay, so the globalization and interdependence presented as a economic phenomenon that have a economic effects, which they result to the increase of competition from a local and foreign products. Like for example, a foreigner set up a business here in the Philippines and his business is selling foreign shoes. He sells high quality shoes at affordable prices. Now because people always look for quality products, they will choose something new and they will probably choose the products that the foreigner offer. And the negative impact is that the local products that will be left behind. That is the bad effect of economic interdependence. While Philippine society has come to realize that this early perspective represented a shallow understanding of globalization, the fact of the matter is that globalization has brought economic development to our society as a whole. Okay, so after a shallow understanding on globalization, our society comes to realize that globalization has and interdependence has positive impact to the economy, in which interdependence results to the increase of economy. This allows industries here in our country to thrive, and also this success can lead to job and wage or salary increases. Okay, thank you for listening everyone. I wanna introduce to you Mr. Christian Besco, who will discuss further the continuation of our report. Thank you.
Good day everyone. So my name is Christian Albesco from BTVTED. So today we continue the discussion about the economic dependence and interdependence. So today we discuss about the four disadvantage of the economic dependence and interdependence. According to Cantor 2001, that foreign capital dependence is increased income inequality in four ways. The first advantage of the economic dependence or interdependence is the peaceful relationship. So most of the countries have resorted to trade relation with each other in order to boost an economy living behind any better past and experience if any. The second is the employment opportunities. So employment we consider it as one of the most crucial advantages. So the globalization has led to the generation of numerous employment opportunities. The companies are moving towards the developing countries to acquire labor forces. According to Holt, 1980s, observed that international dependence, or in other words for globalization, that tends to suppress adult wage, which in turn perpetuate the roles of the children as economic necessities. So the familiar saying, when there are many children in your families, there are many helpers in your occupation. So in the political and military dependence or interdependence, in a survey conducted in late 2018 found that 3 in 5 Filipinos believe that the United States would intervene on behalf of the country in case of war. So this can be taken as an evidence of the Philippines' dependence on both of political and military power. So the point is that whether there are some form of economic dependence or interdependence, politician dependence or interdependence is not the behind, as the participating nation strives to protect their investment and interest in one another. So in economic interdependence is when people rely on other to provide the goods and service required for the supporting their life or for convenience. So in economic dependence is a term that this is wide used to portray the relationship of inequality between the underdeveloped countries. So the expanded flow of expressive and instrumental cultures. So the expressive cultures, as the term suggested, that deals with how a particular culture expresses. So the globalization encouraged the monetization of this cultural global artifact and their export and import among the participation cultures. Expressive culture is a process and emotion and an idea bound within the social production. So today, it is the practically ubiquitous of in a Philippine society, along with the consumption of all things in Korean, from the sun care product to the instant noodles. So the instrumental cultures, on the other hand, it refers to common models of the social orders. So that is the models or ways of thinking about the enacting nation identity. In instrumental cultures, it is an desired instrumental policy in the context of cultures. And cultures policy as a being to use cultural ventures and cultural investment. A simple sample of this is the Philippines educational system. So the next is the expanded flow of the people among the society. So the fact that globalization encouraged the movement of people between nations, that state should come as no surprise to us. So the Philippines Statistic or Authority or PSA estimate that there were 2.3 million overseas Filipinos workers. During the period of the April to September 2017, who were responsible for up to 205.2 billion pesos in the remittance or the Philippine Statistic Authority 2018. So according to Mayor 2000, observed that there are three reasons for this expanded flow of the people among the society. So the first is the socio-economic migration. So the second is the political expulsion, and the last is the travel or tourism. So the socio-economic migration is explain the Philippines OFW phenomena. So the Filipino travel abroad to find better economic opportunities for themselves. So and their families for lack of said opportunity. So the socio-economic that it's defined of as a choice to improve the standard of living by gaining the better paid job. So the next is the political expulsion. So the fact of forming someone to live foreign countries, especially for the political reason, for more breaking the law. So that is the politician expulsion. So the last is travel or tourism. It is the strong indicator of economic development as more and more Filipinos are able to finance short-term travel abroad. The next topic is cultural literacy that will be discussed by Miss Via Prensilio. So thank you for listening. I hope you learned something.
Thank you, Mr. Besco. Hello everyone, I am Via Prensilio, and here we will be talking about cultural literacy. So what is cultural literacy? According to Hearst in 1983, cultural literacy refers to the ability to understand the signs and symbols of a given culture and being able to participate in its activities and customs as opposed to simply being a passive observer. And when we say passive observer, it refers to someone who sees or notices something that they do not take actions, but instead just let things happen. So when we say passive observer, it refers to someone who sees or notices something that they do not take action, but instead let just things happen. Cultural literacy means being able to understand the traditions, activities, and histories of a group of people from a given culture. It is being aware of the things involving around the place where he or she is in. Being culturally literate helps you understand, relate, and interact with people from diverse backgrounds that may be very different from your own. It means being able to engage with these traditions, activities, and histories. When you are culture literate, it opens your mind to different ways of life, that cultural differences and similarities do exist. So, culture includes the language, expressions, entertainment, values, roles, traditions, and etc. So let's now bring culture literacy in the simple sample statement. The classroom was absolute bedlam. So if we do not know the word bedlam, we tend to guess its meaning, we look for it, we search for it, for us to understand what the phrase or statement is all about. So bedlam means chaos or confusion. With this, we conclude that the statement or phrase the classroom was absolute bedlam. This means that there is turmoil or commotion or everything is unrest. But bedlam is a British origin referring to a psychiatric hospital in London erected in its own once representative named St. Mary Bethlehem. Having the knowledge of its culture origin, it enables the person to participate in a conversation or activities that allows him or her to understand what that thing is all about. So, cultural literacy is culture specific, but it is not limited to the national culture. A workplace can be vary from the others, and there is culture difference in the workplace. It could be the time, people around the place, the mission or vision of the workplace, and many more others. There are far too many culture for anyone or to any person to be literate in all of them. Now, let's study or let's take a look to the cultural literacy in the Philippines. So, the government body that is tasked or assigned with the documentations, preservation, the dissemination of Philippine culture, both local and abroad, is the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or the NCCA. They have established the Philippine Cultural Education Program, or the PCEP, which envisions a nation of culturally literate and empowered Filipinos by ensuring that culture is the core and foundation of education, governance, and sustainable development. In 2003 to 2007, Philippine Cultural Education Program, or PCEP, held a comprehensive 5-year plan of action containing various proposed programs, policies, projects, and others to attain its goal and make cultural education accessible to all the sectors of Philippine society. With the enactment of the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009 in March 26, 2010, the Philippine Cultural Education Program established a major gain by its designation as the body, together with the Department of Education, with the task to formulate the cultural heritage education programs both for local and overseas Filipinos to be incorporated into the formal, alternative, and informal education with emphasis on the protection, conservation, and preservation of cultural heritage property, and is under the Republic Act of 10066 in 2010. Cultural education and thus cultural literacy in the Philippines is quite a challenge, given that Philippine culture is a complex blend of many indigenous and colonial cultures and varies widely across the region. So let's consider the question, what makes something or someone a Filipino? De Leon in 2011 argues that this is in part due to a colonial mindset among Filipino artists and inhibits the full development and realization of Filipino artistic creativity. A kind of artistic and cultural creativity that is fully Filipino. It is the excellence in arts via an expressions that made true Filipino, and this is according to De Leon in 2011. And that's it. To wrap it all up, cultural literacy, pertaining to the ideas, customs, and social behavior, and literacy is the knowledge. Combining it together, cultural literacy means being able to understand the traditions, activities, and histories of a group of people from a given culture. Up next is the challenge or challenges of culture literacy in the Philippines to be discussed by Mr. Jerwin Cabernay. Thank you.
Hello Ate Via, thank you for your beautiful and informative discussion. So now, let us proceed to my next topic, the challenges for cultural literacy in the Philippines. So hello, the challenge for cultural literacy in the Philippines. According to Appleby in 1987, this question is a very interesting discussion on the cultural literacy. Give rise to some very difficult questions which are particularly important to a multicultural and multilingual nation like in the Philippines. So the question is, this is based from the cultural literacy in the Philippines. So all I need to do is to read only the question. So the question is based from the multicultural and multilingual nation. So first question is, what kind of knowledge constitute cultural literacy? So it is knowing facts, name, and dates, or it is something more experiential like being familiar with the story or the particular song. Then the second question is, if culture is more caught than taught, should culture literacy be one of the goals of education? If yes, how does one teach it? Of course, this question is the very interesting discussion on the cultural literacy, and this is very important because it is based from the multicultural and multilingual nation. Then the question number 3. The question number 3 is, who is cultures must we be literate in to be considered culturally literate? Who decides which cultures are included and which one are excluded, and on what basis? And next question in the challenges of cultural literacy in the Philippines. The next question is cultural literacy education simply a means for a dominant culture to express its dominance over minority culture? This is based from the multicultural and the multilingual nation. The very discussion and that very interesting discussion that give that very difficult question in this particular important challenge. Then the last but not the least, the question in the challenges of literacy cultural in the Philippines is, how is cultural literacy to be assessed and evaluated, and how can we know someone is culturally literate? So this question is based from the challenges of cultural literacy in the Philippines. That's all. So that's all my assigned topic, the questions about the challenges for cultural literacy here in the Philippines. That is the very important and interesting discussion. Then next reporter is Miss Jessa Dunsal. She discussed about the multicultural literacy.
Good day everyone, I am Jessamine Dunsal from BTVTED GFT. So today, I will be discussing to you about multicultural literacy. Before that, let us define first what is multicultural and what is literacy. So according to Coles Dictionary, Multicultural incorporates ideas, beliefs, and people from different countries and different cultural background. While in literacy is the ability to read, write, and use numeracy, at least one of the method of writing and understanding. So, if we will put together the two terms, we will come out the definition of multicultural literacy. It refers to the skills involved when uncovering bias in regards to the culture, as well as the ability to take different perspectives. It can be connected to language and arts. So let's start our discussion. So, multicultural literacy. So, as our culture begin to mix and change as a result of globalization, conflict inevitably arise over identity, values, and worldviews. So, this situation consequently lead for a literacy that enable us to quickly and easily identify and resolve such a conflict, preferably before they even begin. So, this has come to be understood as a multicultural literacy. So, when we say multicultural literacy, it is the ability to understand and appreciate the parallels and differences between costumes, values, and beliefs of our culture and a different culture. So, we all know that multicultural literacy is very important to globalization because it serves as a powerful tool enabling students, people, to gain a better understanding of both their own cultures and the other cultures. We, as a student, we should also appreciate the other culture so that we can help to build a understanding and respecting for people from other cultures. So multicultural literacies, so it is a set of skills and knowledge, but it is difficult to define because of how it is changes depends on the context of America and Europe. So let us define a multicultural literacy in America and how it is different in European context. So in America, they define a multicultural literacy is a very strong learning towards knowing or identifying a polyethnic origins of knowledge with the express of goal of fostering equality, diversity, and social justice. So, in America, they are referring about their learning towards. So, it focused their multiculturality about the equality, the social justice of the people, the diversity. So, it's about identifying the polyethnic of their cultures. So, while in Europe, they define a multicultural literacy is a form of intercultural communication competence or ICCC. So, it's defined which is they are referring the attitude of a person, their personality, the patterns, and etc. So, it is about a communication, how it is linguistically or their culture, about their language. So, it's about their communication in Europe. While in America, they are referring also a polyethnic origins of knowledge. In Europe, it's about when interacting with others who are linguistically and culturally different from oneself. So that is in Europe context. So that's the difference between Europe and America. So in Europe, they are very strong learning towards the knowing or identifying the polyethnic, while in the Europe, they are referring they are defining the multicultural about the intercultural communication competence, which is it's about the linguistically and culturally. It's defining about how they are interacting with other people. Multicultural literacy as the knowledge and skills necessary to ensure that any communication with a culture different from our own is clear, productive, and respectful. So we should accept and appreciate the other culture, different culture. So different culture is not just limited to someone from another country, but could also include someone whose gender, economic background, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, or even sense of fashion is different from our own. So for example, in our classroom, so we all know that in our classroom has differences. So different culture, different beliefs, different costumes, different religions. So in that situation, we should accept their culture, we should accept their religions, because it's about respecting to other and to ourselves also. So even though in the classroom, for example, that my classmate has a disability, so and some is not Catholic, so we should accept the religion, we should accept her disability, we should understand, we should not discriminate them, we should accept and appreciate, we should help them to encourage to our country, to our place, so that we can gain a piece of our globalization. So okay, so next is, here are the example of manner of being multicultural literate. So first, be selfless. Selflessness is not instinctive to people and is especially difficult when one feels insecure of oneself's identity. When we say be selfless, it's about your care to other people than yourself. It's about you're not selfish. You are caring and loving to other people. You're not understanding yourself. You're understanding the other people. That is be selfless. So it's good also because you can help other people. Number 2 is know that good and useful things can and do come from different from us. So when we say that know that good and useful things can do and do come from the different from us, so that is we should acknowledge good ideas and products have come from different culture. So we should acknowledge. The third one is be willing to compromise. So be willing to compromise. There must be a compromise, a reciprocal adjustment of demands and expectation to accommodate what the other party is willing to give. So it's about to give, to listen both sides and to accept both sides. For example, the voting. So we should accept the other party and we should listen the two sides of the party and we should accept of their platforms. Last one is accept that there are limits. So accepting that what we want cannot be had from that particular source. So it means that we should accept that there are limits. We should not pass or we should not go if there are limits. So we should accommodate that there are limits in our globalization. So that's all for this discussion. The next reporter will discuss the issue in teaching and learning multicultural literacy in the Philippines will be discussed with Miss Estela Garcia, and thank you for listening. Have a good day.
Well, hello, good morning, everyone. So, by the way, my name is Estila Garcia from the group of Group to Rather, and we are from the BTVTED GFD. So today, I will going to share my thoughts. It regards about being and learning multicultural literacy in the Philippines. Okay? So when we say multicultural literatures, it serves a powerful tool. It enables students to gain and understand about their own culture and other cultures of others. So through this deeper knowledge, the relationship can be strengthened, okay? And also bringing the gap between the student from the diverse cultural background. And it can help the student develop awareness by introducing them to current cultural issue. When students variously experience that feelings and also the emotions, the emotions of others, through literature, they are encouraged to look critically at the world and gain a greater understanding of the global community. And now, we will going to talk about the conflicting requirements for peace. It says that the heart of multicultural literacy is peace among the different culture. So do you really think that this is unproductive? Of course it is, because the different culture can consider as the non-productive violent, because the interaction, so meaning it seems that this kinds of method it is easy to assume, okay, because the cultural values can be considered as a value of peace. So since the degree since we are saying that this is the value of peace, no? So the degree and therefore willing to make compromises in order to attain, because this is not in the necessary time, because sometimes a person act according to the values and norms of his or her culture, and also sometimes another person seems avoiding a different word of view or might interpret and his and get behavior from opposite standard point. So of course, every individual person has a different capacity, of course, attitude, styles, and so forth and so on. So although they are facing these kinds of situation, we need to be considered that their perceptual thoughts is based on their way style itself, okay? So let's come and let's talk about the nationalistic and regionalistic pushback. Of course, so before I proceed, I just want to give the different meaning of nationalistic and regionalistic. So do you have any idea it's regard about this? Okay. So as we mentioned about the nationalistic, what comes of your mind first? Okay, I'm pretty sure that when we say the nationalistic, I know that you have different and many ideas it's regard on these questions. Okay, So, the nationalistic, what we call this, so when we mention the nationalistic, no, it's about the nationality, nor sense of the national consciousness, and of course, exalting one motions above all others, and the pleasing primary emphasize or promotions of its cultures, and also the interest as open to the group nations of part of it. So when we say in a short term, nationalistic is talk about the nationality, wherein it's about the nation. Okay. And also, if we are talk about the regionalistic, it's a common term. It's about the religion. Am I right? Okay. And also, it's about the political ideology, which means that it seeks to increase the political power influence and some of the self-determinations of the people of one or more subnational regions. Of course, if we generalize, these kinds of the method is very important tools, not in the society, not in the nationality, and also it is very much important, of course, since we are talking about the classroom. It is important to the classroom because this multicultural will lead to new challenges for teachers, and it also it also considered as a traditionally student coming into the multicultural classroom are the deficit. Why we consider as a deficit? Because they must learn how to navigate unfamiliar people. Their cultures and languages. Those teachers also have added responsibility of leading students through this unfamiliar theory toward achievement. So of course, when someone is new in the classroom, then apparently the teacher will in charge, and the teacher has responsible to guide that student to is basically the teacher will guide and teach. Of course, in the first place is they need to teach the student how to communicate their classmates and classmates and others, and of course in a common term, they need to guide how the student adjust in his or her new environment. Because we need to consider that this requires specialized learning techniques, and also practice of the education is considered as the effective accomplish. So in that case, teacher who unite the classroom with activities both inside and outside of the classroom stand a better chance at boosting student achievement and negative effects that been observed in multicultural classroom in the past. So like what I've said earlier, that the teacher has responsibility to take that student, how they need to adjust, readjust, and something like that. That that part is her or his responsibility to take that new student. And also the most important in the relationship between the what I mean is the most important thing about the relationship between the so the most sorry for the interruption. So the most important thing about the relationship between culture and education, since the culture of teachers and the students affect education, what we call those processes in the classroom. Those culture includes everything that make one group or community within a society distinctive from another languages, values, literatures, worldview, and also in the part of beliefs and behavior can construct a specific group of lifestyle. So in this case, the most important things we need to consider also, like what I've said earlier, that this multicultural literacy is very much important in every individual person, because through in this issue we are highly encouraged about that. We need to consider some cultures because we are all aware that we are not the same at the same time. We have a different ways, attitude, and also culture. So even we're not the same, we need to take it serious. Of course, we need to consider the cultures of others, so we might be in respect in all times. And that's all. And I just want to call Miss Odyssey de Lima. She will going to continue about this topic. And mabuhay.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. So now let's continue the issue in teaching and learning multicultural literacy in the Philippines. The third one we have is the persistence of the problem. So when you hear the word persistence, what comes to your mind? Okay. So when we define persistent, it refers to the ability to continue something in order to exist and happen even if it is difficult, undesirable state or situation, yes, or opposed by other people. That is persistent. So here, it was stated that multicultural literacy might seem a good common sense. Why? Because no one else or no one wanted to experience discrimination and judgment regarding from the race, from the traditions, from the cultures, from the customs and other bases that he or she or others had. So that is one of the purpose of multicultural literacy, in order for every individual to be literate on the differences and the similarities of the culture. So are you familiar with the saying, if you won't do it to me, I won't do it to you? So it's somehow discrimination like that. So for example, if you disrespect my traditions, my cultures, maybe the same thing I will do on your part. That is why again, the purpose of multicultural literacy is to create a perfect sense to refrain and behavior of a negative assumption from that saying, from what it implied. But what makes this as a issue or a problem is that because of our honor and shame, we practice persist. And the worst thing is that we sometimes participating in and justifying such discriminatory behavior, especially in online. That is why most educator in teaching multiculturalism face these issues on how and why a particular problem, why a discrimination still exists today, even if the advancement of the culture of the sciences and technology already available, something like that. So it was answered by BTVTED 2008. So wherein he suggested that discrimination in all forms is really an issue of hatred. So when we say hatred, it is the intense dislike or intense of dislike. So what Boti trying to imply is that hatred is often unintentionally, but it usually result of lack of education. He meant that lack of compassion and lack of respect for others, or right of others, will result to discrimination. That is why it is important that the roots of the hatred, will be attacked and stopped. Yes, considering that internet has the big capacity on the awareness of the existence of people and cultures that are fundamentally different from us, but it has done nothing to mitigate that hatred. What will happen if hatred still exists? Of course, the heart of multicultural literacy will be impossible to achieve. That is the reason why this makes us an issue or a problem. The next one is the question of value. So this involved the question why we should treat people of another culture with respect. If someone asks you such question, what will be your possible answer? Maybe some of us have different a reason. Maybe some said we should treat other people of another culture with respect in order to prevent discrimination and judgment. But the main answer or the main point for that question is for peace. Yes, the heart of multicultural literacy. But what makes it as an issue or a problem is that not every culture, remember, not every culture value peace. Yes, there are certain culture that is easier to destroy those who opposes them rather than caring, understanding, and making an effort to come up a mutual understanding. We also have this the concept, which is what we call the selfish gene or selfish genetic by Dawkins 2016. It was implied that the more two individuals are genetically similar towards one another, it creates a sense of a behavior of selfishly. So meaning, for example, the more that we similarly or similar from one another, it creates a sense of concern to one's need. And the other one, the more, remember, the more two individuals are different from each other, it creates a behavior of selfishly, wherein the issue of discrimination exists. Another is, according to educator Freire 2000, who admitted that when a person or individual, or specifically the oppressed, the oppressed are freed from oppression, he or she will inevitably became a new oppressors. If such perspective became horrible or seems horrible, it is because of the question of value, both individual and collective as a culture, and making no sense without subscribing the absolute moral standard. That is the reason why it makes an issue or a problem. We also have 4 focuses on teaching teachers to be more multicultural in their pedagogies. So this is very important, serve as a guideline in teaching multiculturalism. So the first one we have is learn about the other cultures. According to Bank 1991, the first steps in teaching multiculturalism is knowing the cultures that is not your own. So, yes, we as a teacher, before we teach our student, we must be able to well understand the different cultures. But what will happen if we only, or for example, we teacher only know our own culture? Of course, we will not able to teach successfully to appreciate the cultures that is different from us. So student will not be able to understand the differences and the similarities of the culture, of course. We teacher must be literate first before we teach our student to appreciate the different culture. The second one we have is to familiarize yourself with how discrimination and prejudice appear in your own lives. So according to both T 2008 and Banks 1991b, the teachers must be able to identify. Yes, it is important that we firstly identify and confront the pattern of discriminations and prejudice in our own lives before we teach our student to do the same. Third one, we have as you are, so will you behave. So wherein the core values is the key to genuine multicultural literacy. So we as a teacher, we must show who we are, so that our student can learn positively from us. So we must teach or show them that kind of belief that everyone has an equal rights, no matter how they expresses their traditions or cultures, their skin color, their backgrounds, or their what you call this, accent, and other forms that they have. This implied that we as a teacher must teach our student a proper and a positive value, no matter how similar or different the culture is. The fourth one we have is model more, tell more. So what this trying to point out is we as a teacher must model what empathy and compassion for others look like on a day-to-day basis. So meaning we must teach and show them how to exercise empathy towards those who are different from them, so that they can acquire the necessary ability and practices. We are now on the summary or the important details of this chapter 2. So we have the definitions of what important terms. The first one is the globalization. So wherein it is defined as a process of interaction and integration between people, business entities, government, and culture from other nation. So in order for us to understand what is globalization, it is the connection between different part of a different part of the world, including the businesses, the organization, the government, and anything that is supported by the information technology. We have also the cultural literacy. So simply, cultural literacy, this is the knowledge and understanding on the different culture and participate the activities of the said culture. We also have this multicultural literacy. So wherein this is the knowledge. This is the knowledge and the skills necessary that any communication with a culture is clear, productive, and respectful. We also tackled about the skills and knowledge that is required to be more multiculturally literate. So the first one is the selflessness, of course, the knowledge that good and useful things can or do come from those different from us. The willingness, of course, the willingness to compromise, the acceptance that there are limits, as well as the idea that we cannot be friends with anyone. So this is the skills and the knowledge that an individual must have. So we also have the issue in teaching and learning multicultural literacy in the Philippines. So which is the nationalistic and regionalistic pushback, yes, the persistence of the problem, as well as the questions of value. Okay, that's all for this chapter 2, everyone. We would like to say thank you for listening, and we are so grateful and blessed that we are able to do this video presentation to serve you, and we hope that you learn something from us. So we would like to share this motivational saying that teaching and learning can open our eyes and expand our mind. So we as a future educator, let's continue reshape how we see the world. Let's lead to an improvement as well as to a more well-rounded life. So that's all for today, everyone. Thank you so much again, and happy learning.